Academy Award winner Jamie Lee Curtis. After an award season that saw Angela Bassett win a couple prizes, followed by Carrie Condon, Curtis swooped in there at the last minute in the Best Supporting Actress category, taking the prizes at SAG and the Oscars for Everything Everywhere All at Once. Even though those wins are not my favorites, not by a long shot, Jamie Lee Curtis has always been one of my favorites, going back to Halloween and her reign as Scream Queen. The first R-rated movie I ever saw in a theater was True Lies, so that film means a lot to me too. She's amazing in A Fish Called Wanda and Freaky Friday. I've explored her career in depth in an Elusive Oscar video, and I also made a video about her Oscar win. Yep, I adore Jamie Lee Curtis, but something I haven't talked about too much with her, even in my Elusive Oscar video, is just how many bad movies she has made throughout the decades. Her career has had its ups and downs, with some truly awful films scattered around her good ones. Perfect from 1985 is Anything But, a dull and laughable romance drama co-starring John Travolta, that is mostly known for this scene. There's Christmas with the Cranks, which I know has its defenders, but oh my god, no thanks. Beverly Hills Chihuahua is throwaway trash. You Again, I barely got through, it was so awful. And for anyone who says Halloween Kills and or Halloween Ends is an abomination, I say go watch Halloween Resurrection. But in some way, maybe Jamie Lee Curtis's worst stretch of films arrived between 1994 and 1999. Not True Lies, of course, that is a great movie, and Curtis very much deserved her win at the Golden Globe Awards, but 1996's so-called comedy House Arrest? Yikes. Or 1997's Fierce Creatures, which reteamed Curtis with her A Fish Called Wanda cast. 1998's Homegrown, very bad, and mostly forgotten. Halloween H2O, also from 1998, is super fun, and I would put that with True Lies as two of her better movies from the 90s. But there are two other genre films she made in that decade I think are her two worst titles ever. The first is the atrocious 1994 thriller Mother's Boys, where Curtis with blonde hair shows up as the villain. This one is dull and obvious all the way to the end. And the second is, yes, her worst film, the absolute bottom of the barrel, Virus, released in January 1999. It is a nonsensical, boring, visually ugly movie that quickly came and went, but here at the awards contender, no movie is safe from my interrogation or wrath. I mean, you've seen my Oscar fiasco videos, right? As I talked about in a recent video, I do think 1999 is the best year for movies, but not everything that year is great. There are some stinkers like End of Days, Wild Wild West, Baby Geniuses, and of course, Virus. On this film's 25th anniversary, let's dig into what went wrong with the production and why I believe it is Jamie Lee Curtis's worst movie, which she agrees with, by the way, but more on that in a bit. My name is Brian Rowe, this is the awards contender, and my friend Andrew Campbell is here to help me break everything down. Sit back, relax, and let's get started. Virus began as a screenplay written by Chuck Farrer, which Universal turned down. Farrer then went to Mike Richardson of Dark Horse Comics, who agreed to publish Virus as a comic book series, which came out to great success. Farrer teamed up with A-list producer Gail Ann Hurd of The Terminator and Aliens to approach Universal again about Virus, and this time the studio greenlit the film. Virus marked the directorial debut of John Bruno, who worked as a visual effects supervisor for many of James Cameron's films, including The Abyss, for which he won the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. He had directed parts of the theme park attraction T2 3D Battle Across Time, and thus Universal offered Bruno the director job on Virus. He almost passed, but decided with some changes to the script he would do it. The actors soon came on board, which not only included Jamie Lee Curtis, but also Donald Sutherland, William Baldwin, Joanna Pacula, and Marshall Bell. The film's production lasted for about 5 months at some point in 1997, mostly in Newport News, Virginia, on a ship anchored in the James River. The movie begins on a Russian research vessel where a massive electrical surge strikes the ship and puts in peril everyone on board. Days later, the tugboat Sea Star sails through a typhoon and approaches the Russian vessel, which could be worth millions. The Sea Star crew is led by navigator and ex-Navy officer Kelly Foster, played by Curtis, and engineer Steve Baker, played by Baldwin, the captain being the alcoholic Robert Everton, played by Sutherland. The crew boards the large vessel where the Russian crew appear to be missing, and most of the electronics have been destroyed. They eventually discover the ship's sole survivor, the chief science officer named Nadia, who informs them that something on board is in search of power and that they need to shut off all the generators. The crew finds a dead human being who has been reanimated into a living, breathing cyborg, and we quickly learn a high-tech alien life form has taken control of the ship and wants to destroy mankind on a massive scale.
Steve.
So, with a better screenplay, a much, much better screenplay, and in the hands of a more visionary director, Virus did have the makings of a solid science fiction thriller, especially with its popular comic book source material, its large $75 million budget, and Curtis in the lead role. But reportedly, this was a very troubled production. Curtis sang in David Grove's biography about her, Jamie Lee Curtis Scream Queen, "It was the worst experience of my acting career. It went on for 5 months, and it seemed like it would never end. And the whole time I was wishing I'd never made the film. I just kept wondering how bad the film was going to turn out to be and how it would affect my career. Despite one poster I found that announced the release date as August 14th, 1998, right around the time Halloween H2O came out, Universal clearly delayed it and dropped the film in theaters in the middle of January 1999, which showed the studio had little faith in the movie, as I discussed with Andrew. This is a case where I think having a movie come out in January is the result of it just not being very good, and not so much these days, but especially in like the 90s, many movies that opened in like early to mid-January, it usually meant the studios were trying to like hide these titles. Like, let's just kind of slip this out there. And that's what they did with this film. Opening the weekend of January 15th against At First Sight, In Dreams, and Varsity Blues, Virus crashed and burned at the box office, coming in 9th place with $6 million, and it went on to gross only $14 million in the United States and $16 million internationally, for a $30 million gross total, making this a financial disaster. Reviews weren't kind either, Roger Ebert giving Virus 1 out of 4 stars, writing, "Deep Rising was one of the worst movies of 1998, Virus is easily worse." One critic called it completely predictable and largely fright-free, another said, "It's dead in the water, so why the hell did Jamie Lee Curtis sign on to this Doom project in the first place?"
Maybe it was just she just needed the money. That could be the case.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be. I mean, I know some actors do it. They just need the money.
It might have just been a paycheck. It might have just been a part of her life where she needed to work. All actors, even the top actors, sometimes they do take on a project because they need the money. That's what this feels like to me. Because I'd seen this one time many years ago and watching it again, there is nothing to her character. There is like almost no backstory. It's just her looking in shock and awe at things and running with a gun, and there's like nothing to her character. So I'm like, why would, outside of a paycheck, what did she see in this? The only thing I could find through my research was that the film's director, John Bruno, he worked closely with James Cameron in the visual effects department on Aliens, The Abyss, T2, and True Lies, which Curtis is in. And then Gail Ann Hurd produced Virus, and she also worked with Cameron all the time. So I think there might have been some kind of relationship, professional relationship, Jamie Lee Curtis had with Bruno and Hurd, And so when they reached out about Virus, she probably thought, oh, this is the guy who did the effects for True Lies, and I'm, obviously very talented. This was his feature film directorial debut, Virus. That's probably part of it too. Like she probably trusted him enough, even if she thought the script was so-so. Like, okay, well, this guy obviously has talent, and I don't know if she worked with him directly on True Lies, but there was probably some sort of a relationship there. Virus does mark a truly bad Jamie Lee Curtis performance, not that the bland script helps her in any way. What about William Baldwin as the male lead?
Baldwin boy, I don't know. I didn't like that they trying to make him like a savior. He was pretty useless the entire movie. Truthfully, I would have loved if it was just Jamie Lee Curtis, the only survivor, because I think he was supposed to set up as like the masculine hero of the film. Even though he didn't do too much, and he could have been killed off. I would have been much happier about that.
Yeah, I mean, William Baldwin had a couple hits, like he's in Backdraft from 91, which is really good. But by the end of the 90s, he was probably that actor where you've gone to 15 other people and they've all turned the movie down. And they're like, we start shooting on Monday. What about William Baldwin?
Yeah. Yeah.
Andrew and I did agree the best performance in the film comes from Donald Sutherland, who gets the only interesting character arc.
He definitely has some darkness to him, which I'm like, okay, so they established a bad guy or villain in this movie. I mean, we know like the virus and, all these machines are like the bad guy, but now they need at least, some human bad guy.
What did you think of his last scene where he had turned into the creature?
Absolutely insane. I didn't expect that part to happen, which was pretty great. I feel like he died pretty quickly. Like, I wish we gotten to see more of him and, half machine, half human now. I wish we got to see more of that.
Yeah, it was a really neat reveal. It's one of the best scenes of the movie is him kind of becoming the villain, but you're right. It ends so quickly. That's after 90 seconds or so. They basically just like blow him away and that's it. And you never see Sutherland again. So that was also kind of a missed opportunity. Ultimately, Virus is a debacle of a movie. Visually dark and unsatisfying, as well as extremely tiresome on a narrative level in that worst way, a boring one, as Andrew and I talked about.
There's no enjoyment to me in it. With one, it's hard to see stuff. It's hard to watch. Like visually, I'm just like, what's going on? Everything's dark the entire time. There's not enough good visual effects to keep me interested. Is that what's going to happen? You're bored. You don't want to be bored during a movie. A boring action movie or a boring horror movie, that sucks. Like, I don't know. That's all I can say on that.
Well, again, I think it starts with the lack of character development. You don't really get to know anybody, so it's just kind of stock characters. It's almost like they had a round table. They said, well, let's get a woman in this. Like, let's get like a Jamie Lee Curtis or someone. I mean, her role could have been played by a man, and I don't even know if they'd had to like change the script. It was basically
really not.
Could have been anybody. Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head by calling it, visually, it's very ugly and there's no variety. Like basically they're on one boat, then they're on a bigger boat, and we go into a lot of rooms, a lot of wires and things, and like you gotta have like a really amazing, creature, villain of some kind to maintain our interest. And that part is underwhelming. So all you have basically is this haunted house movie on a boat, going through the motions with characters you don't care about. They could all be wiped out and you'd be like, okay. So that's where I struggle. And it's never scary. There's never a moment where you're like, oh my God. I mean, come on. Virus should have at least been silly in an entertaining way, with some solid scares and action sequences, but nothing ever comes together, and by the stupid fake-out ending, you're just ready for this thing to be over. Now, this is the awards contender. Let's talk awards. I did figure a movie this awful would have had a number of nominations, maybe wins too, at a certain infamous ceremony that takes place in the spring, But as it turned out, no. Are you surprised this film did not get any award nominations of any kind?
It does have a 12% on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean,
but there is the Razzies. The Razzies reward the worst in film every year. Virus did not get a Razzie nomination.
Maybe it's so bad that it's not even camp, I feel.
I do feel like the movie coming out in January helped Razzie voters just forget about it more than a year later. But don't be fooled, Virus is an abomination of a movie, and it is by far the worst of Jamie Lee Curtis's long career. And hey, don't take my word for it, she agrees with me. Do you think Jamie Lee Curtis looks back fondly on this movie?
I don't think she does.
Real quick, here is what Jamie Lee Curtis said about Virus in 2003. Virus is so bad, it's shocking. That is the all-time piece of shit. It's dreadful. That's the only good reason to be in bad movies. Then when your friends have bad movies, you can say, I've got the best one. I'm bringing Virus. That's Jamie's quote.
Yeah, this was a stinker, unfortunately. So at least she kind of owns it in a way. I support all of her statements.
Jamie Lee Curtis might have gone on to win the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress in 2023, but she didn't come close to awards consideration for Virus in early 2000, which I guess turned out to be a good thing. She did indeed evade the Razzie Award that year, and to this day, Curtis has never received a Razzie nomination. If it had ever happened, trust me, it would have been for the truly god-awful Virus.
It's a sci-fi summer movie, and if we did our job right, you will believe it very quickly.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments below what you think of Virus and Jamie Lee Curtis's career. And stay tuned in the coming weeks for another trip back to 1999. Andrew and I are talking She's All That. We'll see you next time at the Awards Contender.